Okay, good morning and welcome, and thanks for coming out today. For those of you that don't know me, I am Troy Clark. I am the President and CEO of Navistar, and today we have the honor of welcoming Governor John Kasich of Ohio. And I know many of the Navistar family know John is a leader who we've worked with over the past few years to grow our operations in Ohio. You know, since his election to be the governor of Ohio in 2010, Governor Kasich has worked with business, us as well as others in the business community, to promote community development and economic development, actually across the entire Midwest. And that's why we're here today. Today at this site, we design and engineer our trucks in Lisle, Illinois, and we manufacture a number of them in Springfield, Ohio, the home of our largest truck manufacturing plant in the U.S. As a matter of fact, some of the vehicles you see behind us here today were produced in that facility. So, Governor, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the men and women in Navistar for your support. And before we hear from the Governor, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Cronin, our DuPage County Board Chairman. Dan.
Thank you. Well, welcome, Governor John Kasich to DuPage County. It's a great day. It's a great day to be a DuPage County Republican. And I am so honored to introduce the governor. I'm honored to let you know why we think he is our favorite candidate for the next President of the United States. Governor John Kasich, he's smart, he's tough, he's accomplished. You know, you don't have to speculate, you don't have to sort of imagine what a presidency would be under Governor John Kasich. We know because we've seen what he's accomplished. What he accomplished when he was in the Congress, ladies and gentlemen. He played a huge role in balancing the federal budget. When's the last time something like that happened? Governor John Kasich brought 400,000 new jobs to Ohio. He took an $8 billion deficit in Ohio and turned it into a $2 billion surplus. And he enacted the largest state tax cut anywhere in the country under Governor John Kasich's tenure. I'll tell you, Governor John Kasich, you are exactly what the United States of America needs. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the next President of the United States, Governor John Kasich.
Up there. Come on. There we go. Well, it's, wow, this is really great, and I'm sorry you've all been standing. They ought to get you more seats, is what I think they ought to do. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and I do want to take questions, because I think it's very important that people can be heard. I grew up in a little town outside of Pittsburgh called McKees Rocks. My father was a postman. Carried mail on his back for 29 years, and he was a guy who was kind of very involved in the community. You know, if the daughter sang a solo or the son scored a touchdown on Friday night, my dad would celebrate with him. And if, in fact, somebody in that family had a loss, my father would, he cried. And I never knew really how much my father meant to the community. After all, he was there for almost 30 years. Until my parents were killed by a drunk driver, and people came to see me and to express to me, you know, how important my father was in their lives, and it always left a profound impact on me. His father was a coal miner. He delivered, you know, he would go down in the mine, and he'd work down there, and he'd come up. And he would think he had a good day's pay, and they would tell him that, no, you've done too much peat, not enough coal. And they just cut his payments. He didn't have much say. He died of black lung and was losing his eyesight as he was getting older. And my mother, I just came to find out because we didn't talk much about this. And we're Croatian, by the way. My mother was Croatian, and that's, here in Chicago. Back in Ohio, they thought that Croatian was something that you crawled out of the ocean, but you actually know what it is. My mother was one of 4, and her sister and 2 brothers never went beyond the 8th grade. And my mother, they tell me, and I just honestly just found this out, used to walk across a little footbridge across the railroad tracks to ultimately get her high school diploma. The town was blue collar and all Democrats, and if the wind blew the wrong way, people would find themselves out of work. So for those who feel as though no one ever speaks for you, that the lobbyists have all the sway, that the special interest groups are the ones who dominate and you get left behind, well, I'm one of the voices that speaks for you. Because, you see, that's how I was raised. That's in my mind's eye. The people who are not the wealthy and the powerful and the connected. When I was a kid, we never got Steelers tickets. Like a lot of you probably don't get Bears tickets. We couldn't get them. And we'd go to see the Pirates play, and it was always on Labor Day because we'd get 2 games for the price of 1, and sit out in the right field bleachers. Well, I left that little town, but I realized how important the whole issue of jobs was when I was living there. Because when we played ball, the kids would come up to the schoolyard, and you could tell when things weren't going well in the family and when they were going better. And I reflect back, and it's all about jobs. That's what it was about. So I left Keys Rocks when I graduated from high school, and I went to this small little town in the school in the Midwest, a small little university. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called Ohio State University. Just beat us on the field. Don't move, okay? But here's the thing. I got there as a giant school, and I had 15 college roommates, and things were not going very well. And one of my uncles told me, Johnny, if you ever want to bring about change, start at the top. So I called the president of the university's office and asked for a meeting, and they wouldn't let me in, and I just kept bugging them. Sort of like trying to meet the CEO of Navistar. The same kind of thing. So finally, they let me in, and I went in to see the president. And he asked me what was on my mind, and I lodged my complaint. And I said, sir, I've been in school about a month, and I'm undecided at Ohio State. You've got beautiful carpeting, the desk, the wallpaper, the lighting. Wow, I said, this is really something. Maybe this is the job for me. What exactly do you do? He told me about his fundraising responsibilities, and he told me about his academic responsibilities. He said that the next day he was going to fly to Washington to have a meeting with President Nixon. And I looked at him and I said, sir, there are a number of things that I would like to talk to him about also. Could I just go with you? And he said, no, you can't go. And I said, well, if I write a letter, would you give it to the president? Now, he had never seen me before, and he goes, well, I guess I could do it. So I went back to my dorm room, and I wrote a letter to the president, basically inviting myself to the White House. Signed it sincerely, John Kasich, P.S. If you'd like to discuss this further, I got time. So a couple weeks later, I go down to my mailbox, and there's a letter from the White House, the office of the president. And I call home, and my mother answered the phone, and I opened the letter, and I said, Mom, I'm going to need an airline ticket. The President of the United States would like to have a meeting with me in the Oval Office. And my mother is shouting, honey, pick up the phone. There's really something wrong with Johnny. So they didn't know what to think about this. They finally bought me an airline ticket. And I flew to Washington. I went through White House security, and I was sitting right outside the Oval Office on a little bench. And a guy walked up to me and he said, young man, you're going to get 5 minutes alone with the President of the United States. What do you think? It's really something. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. New jacket, new shirt, new tie, new pants. I didn't come here for 5 lousy minutes. I mean, seriously, right? You can get that. So they opened the door. I walked in, greeted the President. He greeted me. And the good news is I spent 20 minutes as an 18-year-old first quarter freshman in the Oval Office of the President of the United States. The bad news is I spent 18 years in Congress, and if you add up all the time I spent in the Oval Office, I peaked out at the age of 18. I should have moved to Chicago, okay? So folks, just a couple things before we go to questions. My whole life has been one lightning strike after another. And, you know, in the book The Hobbit, at the very end, the Hobbit looks at a guy named Gandalf, and he says, wow, all these things that have happened to me. I don't know how many of you have ever read that book. But Gandalf looks at him and says, Hobbit, you're a fine hobbit, but you don't think these things happen by accident. And that's kind of how I feel about my life. I was chairman of the Budget Committee in Washington. We did balance the budget. I fought for 10 years of my life to get us there, not because I care about all these numbers, but because I knew that if the earth wasn't shaking, we'd have more employment. Am I right, Mr. CEO? Huh? Am I right about that? I mean, I don't think it's a surprise that they are investing more and more in Ohio, because there's no surprise coming. We're not going to beat you over the head. And we also don't over-regulate. I mean, you've got to have regulations, but if you regulate too much, Navistar could probably take it, but small businesses get killed. And when small businesses are hurting, we don't get jobs. And jobs are so very important, you know, in terms of our society and in terms of our lives. And I would say that at the same time, we need to make sure that we can be fiscally responsible so we're not risking our kids. So we've got the budget balance. 4 years in a row, we paid down $500 billion of the national debt. We cut taxes, and the economy is resilient. There was, at that point, no discussion of income inequality. You know, the kids could get jobs once they graduated from college, and then, typical in Washington, they blew it. We had a projected $5 trillion surplus, and they spent it all. And by the way, the Republicans controlled everything. They had the House, the Senate, the White House. And I'm going to let you in on a dirty little secret. You know, Democrats love to spend, Republicans do too. They just feel guilty when they do it, okay? And you have to have somebody that can stand in the breach. Then I sat out for 10 years. I just left politics, never really thinking I would get back in. And then I got a call. There wasn't a phone call, or it wasn't a text, or it wasn't an email. Anybody here ever gotten a call? Huh? Have anybody here ever gotten a call? No? Nobody in here? Have you gotten a call, sir? It's something that tells you what you're supposed to do. And you don't hear it, you feel it. And maybe it seeps into your conscience. And it was like, okay, I know you love it out here in the private sector. You're having a great time, the party's over. So I signed up to run for governor. And when I won, I inherited a really ugly situation. Almost like, and I want to say, you're a great governor here in Illinois, who's trying to get this state on some solid ground. This is the land of Lincoln, okay? You can't melt down financially in this state and survive. This is ridiculous. Why don't you tell them all to get along better? Get the legislature to work with the governor and get this state fixed before more businesses leave this state, okay? So when I went into Ohio, we were $8 billion in the hole. Our credit was going down. We lost 350,000 jobs, and it's all turned around to where we're now $2 billion in the black. We're up 400,000 jobs. But here's what I also want you to know, and this kind of harkens back to Ohio. And also harkens back to how it was when I was a kid. You see, I think that economic growth is not an end unto itself. I think that economic growth means that there's more things we can do. And so these people who have lived in the shadows for too long, and let me give you an example. In our state, we think it is a disaster to have the mentally ill either living under a bridge or living in prison. We believe we got to pull them out into the sunlight and give them a chance to get on their feet. We believe the drug addicted can be rehabilitated. We have an 80% success rate in having people leave our prisons and not go back. It's usually a revolving door. And these people who can, in fact, get on their feet can contribute to saving other lives. We don't want to leave the drug addicted in the shadows or in the prison. And the working poor, how about a system where if you get a pay raise or a better job, you don't lose more benefits than what you gain? How about giving people a reason to be able to work harder, to get a better job, and to be able to pull themselves out of the working poor condition into the middle class by having rational programs and rational laws that give them reasons for that. And we also believe that the developmentally disabled ought to be integrated. I don't know whether you have a program here at Navistar or not, but we ought to have one, so that those that are made special have a chance to live out their God-given purpose. And finally, for those in our minority community, too many of them feel as though this system not only doesn't work for them, but works against them. And we know about this in Chicago and in Illinois, and in our state, as we should do in the country. We've got to spur entrepreneurship in the minority community, give people a chance. We need to reform our criminal justice laws. We need so many things we need to do because America is strongest when we're together, not when we're divided. And let me just tell you one other thing. In this campaign where I'm running for president, people tell me that I should resort to name calling. Okay? Let me just let you in on something. I'm going to run a positive campaign for the White House, not like a little red. We have a lot of problems, a lot of challenges in this country, but they can be dealt with. But I'll tell you how you solve the problem of Social Security. People who work in the Congress and people in the administration have to realize one thing. To make this country better, to make this country stronger, before we're Republicans or we're Democrats, we are Americans, and we need to come together as Americans to solve the problems we have in this country. With that nice, polite applause, I'll take a few questions. Every one of these town halls works out great. Don't ruin it for me, would you? So you're first.
Well, thanks for coming, first of all. I appreciate that. I look at this election as you being by far the most qualified candidate in either party. And I'm going to vote for the most qualified candidate. However, my sense is that the people of our country don't vote for the most qualified people. I'm just wondering what your take is on that.
Well, let me just tell you, because I did not engage in name calling, you thought my name was Governor of Ohio, okay? And then about a month ago, or not even to say, maybe about 2.5 or 3 weeks ago, you actually started to see, you know, who I was a little bit. And now in the last couple weeks, a heck of a lot more. And I can tell you that we've had an election where about 50% of the delegates have been selected and 50% are not yet selected. And with those states that have not yet selected a delegate, basically the three, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and I are dead even going into the last half of this whole match. So don't be thinking it's over. This isn't a parlor game, okay? This is like picking the president. And people say, well, when do they get in? When do they get out? How do they make a deal? What, are you kidding me? I'm running for this job because, first of all, I have the national security experience and I have the record of lifting people with this economy. Why the heck would anybody think that we're going to make a deal? So, I just wish I could be each and every one of you. Because I want you to understand, I don't even like politics. I don't like politics. I don't mind compromise. As long as, first of all, you don't ever have to compromise your principles. Sometimes you have to walk away. I walked away when I was in the Congress when the government shut down because, frankly, I'll tell you, I just hit the nail on the head. The Clinton administration wanted to give us a phony budget, and I said, I'm not going along. And when Newton Dole looked at it and said, well, maybe it's not so bad, I said, fine, I'm going to fight you. Because I think that we have to stand up for folks. And here's what I mean about I don't like politics. You see, I don't care about some party boss. I don't even know if they exist anymore. I don't know where they are. They go, well, you know, the party bosses. I've never met one. If I've met one, I didn't even spend any time talking to them. Here's what I'm saying. Let's look at our problems. And let's figure out how we turn them and begin to fix them. I asked your CEO of Navistar today about trade deals. You know, this idea that we go when there's a violation, and we go to some international bureaucracy and it takes a couple years to figure it out. And then in the meantime, we lose our jobs. That's just a bunch of bunk. We're not going to sit here and have the American worker beaten on because we're relying on some international bureaucrat. Now that doesn't make the free traders in my party happy. Tough. Because I am for free trade, I am for open because it gives us all better prices. 1 out of every 5 American is attached. Their job is attached to trade. There are 38 million American jobs connected to it. But we have to be on a level playing field. You know, when I was first elected governor, I had a meeting with all the lobbyists. You're going to love this story. Maybe you'll love it, but I hope so. So I had a meeting with them, and I knew that the whole place of Ohio needed to be flipped upside down in order to save us. So I had a meeting and I said to the special interest groups, the lobbyists that were there, I said, look, I'd like you to get on my bus because we're going to have a lot of changes here in Ohio. And let me explain to you, you either get on the bus or I'm going to run you over with the bus, okay? Because we cannot fool around. Here in this country, you think about, I'm going to tell you about the Trump voter, because it's really the Kasich voter too. I haven't had a darn pay raise forever. I got my money in a bank. I'm supposed to get interest. They got my money. They give me nothing. I'm a young person. I believe I got a better chance of seeing a UFO than a Social Security check, which I'm going to pay into all of my lifetime. I educated my kids, and they were supposed to get a good job, and they've rung up all this debt, and they're living in my basement. These are the concerns that they have, and they're legitimate.